The glass hit the marble floor before I even saw it leave her hand. I was already on my knees before the sound stopped ringing in my ears. Do you know what that cost? Se-yeon's voice cracked through the kitchen like a whip. Do you know what you just destroyed? I hadn't touched it. I hadn't been anywhere near it. But I already knew how this would end, because it always ended the same way. I reached for the shards with my bare hands, and one of them bit into my palm, and I didn't flinch, because flinching only made her angrier. I'm sorry, I said. I'll clean it up. Sorry doesn't fix Crystal. I kept my head down. That was the rule I'd made for myself the day I started working in this house. Keep your head down, keep your hands steady, keep your mouth shut, and go home at the end of the day with your dignity still intact, even if nothing else was. Then I heard footsteps. Slow, unhurried. The kind of footsteps that didn't need to announce themselves because every room in this house already knew who they belonged to. Taemin Ryu crouched down next to me. Not across from me. Not above me. Next to me, on the floor, in a $3,000 suit. And he started picking up the broken glass with his own hands like it was the most natural thing in the world. Sir, you don't need to. I know I don't need to, he said, not looking at me, looking at the glass. That's exactly why I'm doing it. Se-yeon's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. Taemin, she broke. She didn't break anything. His voice was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that made grown men in his boardrooms go pale. I've spent 15 years learning how to tell when someone in my house is lying to me. And right now, someone is lying to me very badly. The room went silent. I stayed on my knees, glass in my palm, heart slamming against my ribs, because I didn't know if that sentence was about to save me or bury me. If you believe real strength protects instead of humiliating people who can't fight back, drop a black heart before we keep going. This story is about to get a lot more complicated. My name is Amara Johnson. I came to Busan 2 years ago with one suitcase and a promise to myself that I would never again let a man's cruelty define the shape of my life. Back home, I'd been engaged to someone who smiled in public and broke things in private. Plates, promises, eventually my trust in my own judgment. I left with nothing but my name and my nerve. I took a job in a stranger's house on the other side of the world because strangers, at least, didn't already know how to hurt me. Taemin Ryu ran an empire that didn't advertise what it really was. Shipping company on paper. Something colder and older underneath. His mother had died 2 years before I arrived, and her final wish had been an arranged marriage to secure an alliance between two powerful families. The bride she'd chosen was Se-yeon Bak, beautiful, polished, the kind of woman who could walk into any room and make it rearrange itself around her. I'd learned quickly that the polish was doing a lot of covering. That night, after the glass, after Taemin sent Se-yeon to bed with 4 words, "We'll talk tomorrow," he found me in the laundry room pressing a towel against my cut palm. "You should see a doctor," he said. "It's a scratch. You're bleeding on my floor and calling it a scratch." I looked up at him, and for the first time in 2 years, I let a little bit of my exhaustion show. "Sir, respectfully, I don't need you to rescue me. I need you to stop pretending you don't see what happens in this house when you're not in the room." He didn't answer right away. He just studied me the way I imagine he studied contracts, looking for the clause someone was hoping he'd miss. "I see more than you think," he finally said. I didn't believe him. Not yet. 3 days later, I found out exactly how much he'd already seen, and it terrified me more than any threat Se-yeon had ever made. I was refilling the water pitcher outside his study when I heard her voice through the door, low and sharp, the phone pressed to her ear. "I told you, once I'm his wife, the money is mine to move. I don't care what happens to the maid. Just make sure she's gone before the wedding. Fired, deported, I don't care which, just gone." I stood frozen in the hallway, pitcher shaking in my hand, water sloshing over the rim and onto my wrist. I wasn't imagining a threat anymore. I was standing outside the door of my own ending, already being written by someone else. I didn't tell anyone that night. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself rich people talked in exaggerations. But when I finally laid down in my small room off the kitchen, I said out loud, to no one, "I don't need her respect. I know who I am. She can't take that, no matter what else she takes." I fell asleep holding onto that sentence like a rope over a drop I couldn't see the bottom of. If you think truth always finds a way to the surface no matter how carefully someone tries to bury it, type dignity in the comments. You're going to want to remember that word for what happens next. The frame came 4 days later. I found the necklace in my drawer, tucked under my folded uniforms, a diamond piece I recognized instantly because I dusted the case it usually lived in every single week. My stomach dropped straight through the floor. Se-Yun discovered it 20 minutes later, in front of the head housekeeper, in front of 2 other staff, in front of Taemin himself, summoned specifically for the occasion. I knew it, she said, holding the necklace up like a trophy. I told you she couldn't be trusted. Foreign staff steal, Taemin. I warned you. Every eye in that room turned to me. I felt my whole body go cold, and then hot, and then cold again. That particular kind of fear that doesn't have a temperature because it's too big for one. I didn't take anything, I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt, because if I was going to lose everything in this moment, I refused to lose it while shaking. I have never once touched that necklace outside of cleaning its case. Then explain how it got in your room, Se-Yun said, smiling now. Actually smiling. And that smile told me everything I needed to know about how long she'd been planning this. I looked at Taemin. I expected him to look away. I expected the same thing I'd expected from every powerful person I'd ever worked for. That when it came down to a choice between believing his fiancée and believing his maid, the math would never favor me. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. I installed cameras in the staff hallway 2 weeks ago, he said quietly. After a phone call I overheard that I didn't like the sound of. He turned the screen around. Grainy footage, time-stamped, showed Se-Yun slipping into my room that morning while I was serving breakfast, the necklace in her hand, gone in under 30 seconds. The room didn't just go silent. It went airless. You knew, Se-Yun whispered, staring at him like she was seeing him for the first time. You knew this whole time, and you let me. I let you show me who you really were, he said. I needed to see it with my own eyes, not just hear it through a door. I should have felt triumphant. I didn't. I felt sick, because I could see something breaking behind Se-Yun's eyes that had nothing to do with getting caught. You don't understand, she said, and her voice cracked in a way I hadn't heard from her before. Not once. Not in 2 years of watching her perform composure like a second skin. You don't know what it's like to watch your brother dying in a hospital bed and know you don't have the money to save him. You don't know what desperation does to a person who used to have a conscience. Taemin went still. I went still too, because this was the moment the story stopped being simple, and simple was the only way I'd known how to survive it so far. Here's a plot twist I didn't see coming, and neither did anyone else in that room. Se-Yun wasn't cruel because she enjoyed cruelty. She was drowning, and she'd decided somewhere along the way that drowning gave her permission to pull someone else under with her. That doesn't excuse what she did to me, but it changes what kind of story this is. Keep watching, because what happens after this reveal is the part that actually stayed with me. Your brother, Taemin said slowly. The one in Seoul General. You knew about him too? Se-Yun's laugh came out broken. Of course you did. You know everything. You just don't do anything until it's useful to you. That's not true, he said, and for the first time, I heard something raw in his voice, something that wasn't the calm control I'd gotten used to. I don't act on every rumor I hear because I've spent my whole life watching people weaponize other people's pain. I wanted proof before I destroyed someone's life over an accusation. That's not the same as not caring. Se-Yun's family arrived within the hour, summoned, I assumed, by someone on staff who understood the weight of what had just happened. I watched from the hallway, out of sight but not out of earshot, as her father's face twisted into something colder than anything I'd seen from Se-Yun herself. You've embarrassed this family, her father said. Theft. A staged accusation against household help. Do you understand what this does to us? I was trying to save Min-jun, Se-Yun said, and her voice was so small now I barely recognized it as the same woman who'd screamed at me over a broken glass a week earlier. I didn't know what else to do. That's not our problem to solve, her father said. You've made your choice. Live with it. They left her standing alone in that hallway, in a house that was never going to be hers, disowned by the very people who should have caught her when she fell. I felt something shift in my chest, watching her. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something that made room for it. I stepped out of the shadows. Amara, don't, the head housekeeper said behind me, a warning I understood but couldn't obey. I walked up to Se-Yun, who flinched when she saw me. Actually flinched, like she expected me to hit her, and maybe some smaller version of me wanted to. I know what it's like to have no one choose you, I said. I know what it's like to be so scared of losing everything that you become someone you don't recognize in the mirror. I'm not going to pretend what you did to me didn't hurt. It did. But I'm also not going to be the reason you end tonight, with absolutely nobody in your corner. Se-Yun stared at me like I'd spoken a language she'd never heard before, even though we'd been speaking the same one for 2 years. Why would you do that? After everything I put you through? Because someone showed me mercy once, a long time ago, when I didn't deserve it either, I said. And it's the only reason I'm still standing here able to offer it to you. If you've ever shown kindness to someone who hurt you, and it cost you something to do it, type strong in the comments right now. This next part is the moment everything changes. Taemin had been standing in the doorway the entire time. I didn't know how long. Long enough, apparently, because when I turned around, his expression had changed into something I'd never seen on him before. Not the calculated calm of a businessman, not the controlled fury of a man who'd just uncovered a betrayal, but something quieter. Something that looked almost like grief for a version of the future he'd been prepared to walk into blind. That night, he called his father's advisors into the study. I wasn't supposed to hear any of it, but the walls in that house were older than they looked, and sound traveled if you knew where to stand. I'm ending the engagement, he said. Taemin, the alliance with the Bak family took 3 years to negotiate. I don't care how long it took. I won't marry a woman who kneels to my money in public and steps on someone with none the moment my back is turned. My mother wanted this marriage because she thought it would make our family stronger. But I finally understand what she actually meant by strength, and it was never about who you marry for advantage. It was about who you protect when nobody's watching. And what do we tell the Bak family? Tell them I'll cover Minjun's medical costs. Quietly. Not because I owe Se-Yun anything. Because a sick young man shouldn't pay the price for his sister's mistakes, and I have more money than I know what to do with, and this is exactly what it should be used for. I sat down on the bottom step outside the study, my back against the cold wood, and I put my hand over my mouth so no one would hear me crying, because I didn't fully understand why I was crying at all. Relief, maybe. Or something bigger than relief. The strange, unfamiliar feeling of watching someone choose justice over revenge when revenge would have been so much easier, and so much more satisfying, and so much less than what he actually did. Se-Yun left the estate 3 days later. I didn't see her go. I only saw the empty space where her belongings used to be, and I felt the strange, complicated piece of an ending that didn't taste like victory, because it wasn't supposed to. Weeks passed. The house exhaled. I went back to my ordinary days. Laundry, meals, quiet mornings before anyone else woke up. Except something had shifted, subtle enough that I almost didn't notice it until it was too big to ignore. Taemin started coming into the kitchen. Not to check on staff, not to give instructions. He'd just come in, sit at the small table by the window where the staff usually ate, and ask me questions about my day like the answer actually mattered to him. You don't have to keep doing this, I told him one morning, pouring tea into 2 cups instead of 1, the way I'd started doing without really deciding to. Doing what? Coming in here. Talking to me like I'm not just someone who works for you. He was quiet for a moment, turning his cup slowly on the table. I spent my whole life being told that respect is something you command. That people bow because you have power, and that's the same thing as them actually respecting you. He looked up at me. You never bowed to me once. Not even when I had all the power in this house, and you had none. I think that's the first time in my life someone showed me what real respect actually looks like, not fear wearing a nice dress. I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't say anything. I just handed him the second cup of tea. Can I pour, for once? He asked, reaching for the teapot before I could stop him. I let him. It was such a small thing. A man pouring tea for the woman who used to serve him. But I felt it land somewhere deep, somewhere that had been closed off for 2 years, somewhere I'd built out of scar tissue and quiet survival. I let myself smile, not the careful, professional smile I gave to guests, but something real, something I hadn't let anyone see in a very long time. He noticed. Of course he noticed. He noticed everything. There it is, he said softly. That's the first time I've seen that smile aimed at me instead of hidden from me. I still don't know what this is becoming. Between the man who once watched silently while I knelt on broken glass and the man who now pours my tea before his own. I don't know if trust rebuilds in a straight line or if it circles back on itself the way grief does, showing up again just when you think you've moved past it. What I do know is this. Dignity was never something anyone in that house could purchase or demand or steal from me in a drawer full of stolen diamonds. It was the one thing I walked in with, and the one thing I walked out with too, no matter what anyone tried to take. If you want to see what happens next, whether Amara can actually trust a Ryu after everything this family put her through, and what Se-Yun does with the second chance she never expected, comment part 2 below, and I'll bring you back into this world very soon.